Hi everyone, welcome back to the next review video for the biology or living environments regions. This is Unit 4, Topic 2, Part 2, looking at the human impact. This is very important and this comes up on the regions a lot. The first thing you want to know is that the human population in the past 100 years has really skyrocketed. It has increased drastically due to better medicine and medication with the invention of cures of diseases and vaccinations, as well as better sanitation, helping us increase our lifespan and also reproduce more, drastically increasing the population. Now, this human population increase affects the environment in many ways, primarily because humans can modify their environment to fit their needs. So what this means is things like logging to get more wood resources and build more houses, or things like building cities, all alter the environment to help humans fit their own needs. And this modification causes lots of issues. One thing you want to know as well is that as the population increases, humans require more resources. So we need more resources just to survive. So because there are more people, we need more food for us to eat. We need more water for us to drink. We need more space for us to live. We need more fossil fuels. So we just really all need more resources. And those resources also contribute to more waste and pollution and lots of negative effects on the environment. So now we're going to look down towards some natural resources. And there are two types of natural resources. The first are renewable natural resources, and these are resources that can be restored or replaced. So some examples of these are trees, water, animal populations, solar energy especially, wind energy. These are all things that can be restored, replaced, or continuous, and that if we use them, they won't immediately die out. Like water, it can have the water cycle. Using sun energy, the sun is constantly giving off energy and it's not destroying the environment. However, non-renewable natural resources are resources that cannot be restored or replaced in our lifetime. And these ones often have a lot more negative effects on the environment. Some examples of these are coal, oil, and natural gas. For example, once we burn some coal or use some oil, you can't put the oil back in the environment to use it again. Once it's burned, it is not going to be restored or replaced anytime in our lifetime. So now we're going to look at pollution and different types of pollution as well as their causes and effects. So the first one you want to know is global warming or climate change. This is caused from carbon dioxide that is released into the air from burning fossil fuels. So we burn fossil fuels for a bunch of things like powering our cars, creating electricity, running factories, and this releases carbon dioxide into the air, which fuels global warming and climate change. Now, this has many negative side effects that include melting ice caps and melting polar ice caps and icebergs falling. That also contributes to rising sea levels as the ice melts, the sea levels rise, which is really bad for coastal regions. That causes coastal floodings where the water comes into these areas. More severe weather, which includes severe hurricanes, droughts, wildfires. These are all just very severe weather patterns. Okay, so now we're going to look at acid rain. So acid rain is our second one, and this is caused by sulfur dioxide from coal. So when we burn coal, it releases this compound sulfur dioxide, and this mixes with rain. So sulfur dioxide mixing with rain would cause acid rain. And the effect of acid rain is largely the destruction of plant life and ecosystems. Because acid rain is obviously more acidic than regular rain, plants can't use that water, and it destroys the plants and ecosystems, which throws off the entire food chain. Now, our next type of pollution you want to know is ozone depletion, and this is caused specifically by CFCs that are released into the air. So CFCs stands for chlorofluorocarbons, which are not naturally occurring compounds. These are man-made chemicals that are released through various industrial processes that were actually banned recently to try and help the environment. But an ozone depletion has the negative effects of increases in sunburn and skin cancer. This is because the ozone, if you remember, is the protective layer way up in the atmosphere that blocks a lot of radiation from the sun getting to Earth. However, if the ozone is destroyed, that means that more harmful rays coming from the sun can come in, which increases sunburn because there's higher UV intensity, and also increases rates of skin cancer from harmful toxins. Now, the final one you want to know is smog, which is created by smoke and fog, as it sounds, smog, smoke, fog. So this is caused by smoke and fog mixing in the air, and this has the negative effects of respiratory issues, which is just another word for lung problems, as well as irritation of the eyes, because when the smoke and fog gets into your eyes, it's itchy, it's really not comfortable. You don't want it in your eyes. So those are the types of pollution you want to know. Next, we're going to look at reductions in biodiversity. So what is a reduction in biodiversity? This is just when species die off. When species are dying, that's a decrease in biodiversity. So species dying is a form of decreasing biodiversity, and the impact of decreasing biodiversity is that it decreases stability. So stability of the entire ecosystem is thrown off. That's because there are not as many organisms either as food or producers. It throws the entire system out of check because there isn't the right amount or proportions of specific animals, which means the whole system is less stable. So we're going to look at invasive species. So invasive species are species that don't live in the area, and they primarily decrease biodiversity. The reason that they do this is how, I guess, they interact with their new environments. Because they aren't living to the area or a part of the ecosystem, they end up taking over habitats. So they take over habitats, which causes native species to die off. This is because these native species that occupy specific niches, oftentimes these invasive species can either better adapted to that niche or can take over that niche, which drives out the native species and destroys the ecosystem because other organisms that either feed off those species or that those species help are thrown out of check, which means that the entire ecosystem can be destroyed. So the ways to control these invasive species, there are a few ways. The first is a form of biological control, which is really just introducing a natural predator. What this means is that if you have an invasive species and you take their natural predator from whatever their original environment was, that can help to keep the number of that invasive species in check, or you can do any other predator native to that area, and that means that they won't fully destroy the environment because they won't be existing in unchecked numbers. The second one you can do is poison control. And the poison control is really just like using what it sounds like. It's controlling them using poison to stop the excessive spread. And then the final one is catch and release method or hunting. So hunting would be hunting them down, and catch and release would be catching the invasive species and then releasing them elsewhere where they wouldn't be damaging the ecosystem. So catch and release is probably better for those invasive species because they're not being killed, but hunting would have the same effect of removing them from that ecosystem. So those are the ways to control invasive species. Now, the final part of this lesson is societal actions and what we should do to do our part. So, because environmental problems are the result of our human population, and as shown, I guess, throughout this entire video, the increase in human population and the increase in resources contribute to lots of forms of pollution, harming biodiversity, and other issues. We all must work together and cooperate to solve this. And by we all, I mean that includes individual people doing everyday actions. That includes like states, like I guess New York or any other state, and larger nations, like nations across the world. So we all need to work together to try and help solve environmental problems to benefit the entire world and all future generations. So there are various different ways that we can be doing this and that we can work together. The first is that states and nations can make laws and regulations. So that could look like a national ban on things, like for example, nations across the world ban the use of CFCs to help fix the ozone layer, and that's an example of laws and regulations. Things like abiding by the Paris Accord is another international regulation to help resolve this. So these are all large things that people can abide by. But then on an individual level, individuals can do various things which have a smaller impact, but it really stacks up to help the environment. The first is that individuals can reduce, reuse, and recycle. These are the three R's you always want to remember. You want to reduce your use of non-renewable energy resources and things that are damaging to the environment. Reuse things that are as much as possible, like reusable water bottles or anything else that you can use over and over again. And recycle old papers and plastics so it doesn't end up in landfills, destroying the environment. The next is to do things like unplug appliances, which helps you to decrease your energy consumption. Unplugging appliances means that you use less electricity, you're less reliant on various fossil fuels. Or, a really good one and a really big one is to switch to alternative energy sources. Things like wind power, solar power, hydropower, geothermal energy are all much more renewable than regular fossil fuels, which are often used like burning coal, crude oil, natural gases that are not renewable and release massive amounts of carbon dioxide. So switching away from these large fossil fuels can have a really big benefit on the ecosystem. Okay, so now we're going to look at some review questions. We have number here, 24. Dead zones are areas found in the ocean and some large lakes where there is not enough oxygen to support life. Algae blooms occur when excess nutrients are introduced as pollutants from fertilizers, sewage treatment plants, and the burning of fossil fuels. When the algae dies and undergoes decay, bacteria rapidly use up the oxygen in the area. which human activity would most likely result in a decrease in the size and number of dead zones? So this whole really long thing is basically asking which human activity would best increase the environment, because it says that these algae blooms, which contribute to this issue, occur from excess nutrients like pollutants and fertilizers and sewage treatment plants. So it really says that these negative and fossil fuels, I missed them. It basically lists a whole bunch of negative human things that can increase these algal blooms and cause dead zones. So to decrease these dead zones, we would want to engage in eco-friendly practices. So we want to see which one is most friendly. So number 1 says irrigating fields and lawns to increase runoff into oceans and rivers. This would definitely not be our option. It would worsen it, because runoff with like pesticides and into oceans and rivers is what contributes to these issues and causes this massive pollution with algal blooms and dead zones. The second one is building more coal-fired electrical generating plants. This one is also definitely not eco-friendly, because fossil fuels are not helping with this issue, and putting more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere won't help. Number 3 is reducing the use of chemicals on farm fields and golf courses. So this one would be our best answer, because it's using less dangerous chemicals that can spill over into the environment and harm organisms. And just to be safe, we'll look at number 4. It says constructing more sewage treatment plants on the shores of lakes and rivers. So this one is definitely not the answer, because it specifically says in the question that sewage treatment plants are contributing to the issue. So the solution to bad sewage plants would not be to build more sewage treatment plants. So our best answer here would be number 3. Our next question is about acid rain. It says, number 14, acid rain is a major problem in the Adirondack Mountains. Evidence that acid rain negatively affected the Adirondacks ecosystem is that. And so this is really just asking, what is the effect of acid rain? Number 1, this rain has increased the amount of water in Adirondacks lakes. This is not proving a negative effect on the ecosystem. There just being more water is not the problem with acid rain. It's more about the acidic component of the rain. The second would be that there has been a decrease in the variety of fish found in Adirondacks lakes. So this one would likely be our answer, because the variety of fish found in Adirondacks lakes could decrease from acid rain, as if they're not adapted to this more acidic environment and the more acidic rain, they will die out, decreasing biodiversity and causing a loss of life of many fish. So, but to be safe, we'll check the other answers. We have number 3. The amount of carbon dioxide in the air over the Adirondack Mountains has drastically decreased in recent years. So this would not be our answer, because it's asking for a negative effect. Decreasing carbon dioxide in the air would be a positive effect, because it's getting too high right now from fossil fuels. And finally, number 4, the number of heterotrophic organisms in the Adirondack lakes has increased. This would also not represent a negative effect of acid rain. Just saying that there are more organisms that eat other organisms in the lakes does not prove a negative effect, and is also not a result of acid rain. So our best answer here would be number 2. And finally, our last question is number 25. An invasive species, the spiny water flea, was recently found in a New York lake. These water fleas eat zooplankton, a food also consumed by native fishes. The fleas spread from lake to lake by attaching to fishing lines, anchor ropes, and boats. Which statement best describes the effect of the water fleas on the lake? So this is really just a regular question saying, what's the effect of invasive species? Number 1 is that it will not compete with animals in the local food chain. We know this one is not the answer, because it says that the fleas eat the zooplankton that is also consumed by native fish. That means that it's definitely a form of competition, because native fish eat the same food as these new spiny water fleas. Number 2 is that it will feed on organisms that are important to other species. This is our best answer, because the part I just underlined says that they eat zooplankton, which is an organism important to all the other fish species in the region. But we'll look through the other answers quickly to be safe. Number 3 says the number of water fleas will decrease due to a lack of food. This is not true. The number of water fleas is not what's going to decrease, but rather the native fish populations will decrease, because their food sources are being stolen by the water fleas. And now finally is number 4. There will be no effect on species in the lake. We definitely know this is not the answer, because if the native species in the lake lose their food source to these spiny water fleas, then there will be a significant decrease in those other fish, because they'll be starving to death. So number 2 would be our best answer here. Thank you for listening.